To watch more Bhagavad Gita discourse videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Namaskar. Good morning, everybody. Jai Shri Krishna. Maybe good afternoon, maybe good evening, or depending on where you are. So it's a pleasure to be a part of this great Gita conference. And my thanks to the organizers who put in so much work behind the scenes for all for their service and their hard work. And thanks for Swamiji for being the mastermind behind it. So really, if we think of, in ancient India never had a canonical text in the way that they say Christianity has the Bible, Islam had the Quran. There are so many texts and traditions. Nominally, of course, we have the Vedas and the Upanishads, but really there's a vast array and variegatedness of Indian texts. But from that, mass of sacred literature, probably the Bhagavad Gita has emerged as the most representative text of Hinduism, and certainly in our modern day and age, certainly, in the last 100 years, the great nationalist leaders of India as well identified it as the sort of text that best represents, Hindu thinking and so forth. So it's an apt text, much more so than Vedanta, which is very hard work, very archaic, and very much Vedanta is all about interpretation of the Upanishads and obscure passages. So the Gita really is a much more user-friendly text in terms of giving us information about who we are ultimately and how to navigate this world. So we'll start with, we'll jump to chapter 4. We might want to jump to chapter 4, where Krishna says that, announces who he is, that he's Bhagavan. And he says, but there were two types of yoga in the ancient times. And there was the yoga of the yogins and what he calls Sankhya. We might call action yoga and inaction yoga. And Krishna says one of them got lost. The how to act in the world yoga, which is most commonly called karma yoga today. Although the Gita uses the term buddhi yoga. It uses the term buddhi yoga as synonymous with karma yoga, but it actually uses the term buddhi yoga, buddhi yukta, more than it does karma yoga, which is action in the world yoga, which is taking knowledge. Both types of yoga, the action yoga and inaction yoga, they're both based on knowledge, that there is an Atman. Okay, there is an Atman. This information we get from the Upanishads. The Upanishads, this is the Vedanta project, to indicate that there is an Atman, and we should seek the Atman. The Atman is ultimately the foundation of who we are, at deepest level. Personally, internally to us as individuals, and also Brahman, in terms of the cause. Second verse of the Vedanta Sutra. What is this? Janmadhyasya yataha. What is Brahman? It is that from which creation and maintenance and disintegration emerge. So Brahman is both on what we nowadays we might call intelligence, intelligent design, that which lies behind creation in a cosmic way, but also within us. There is a spark of that Brahman called the Atman. So this is jnana. And we get this jnana, this information, from the Vedanta tradition. In fact, the whole Vedanta Sutra is nothing other than a systematization of the Upanishads in terms of trying to establish that Brahman is the cause of all causes, and that the goal of life is to seek that. And, and the fourth chapter is about, how to do that. So this is jnana. So now there's two things you can do with this jnana. You can take it to the forest and practice Patanjalian type yoga, the yoga of the Yoga Sutras, which is Chitta Vritti Nirodha, completely stilling the mind, blocking out the world, Pratyahara, right? You can just perform meditation, and we see so many yogis in the ancient texts, in the Mahabharata and the Moksha Dharma, even Rama, when he's in the Ramayana in the forest, we see these yogis with the dreadlocks and sitting in the caves and performing that. So that's one thing you can do with jnana, with knowledge of the Atman. You can take it to the forest and seek your Atman. And Krishna says, there were two types. But one got lost. Which one got lost? Action in the world, right? Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu sa kalenaho mahata yoga nashta. Yoga nashta got lost. What kind of yoga got lost? Samatvam yoga mudshate karma sukaushalam. I think Swamiji just mentioned that verse. Skill in action yoga. So two types of yoga. One, which we find, I think, represented in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which, by the way, has become very popular in the West now because of asana. Asana has spread in the West by the great teachings of the great teachers like Krishnamacharya and Guruji Iyengar and Desikacharya and great Shivananda from Rishikesh and his disciples. So these great teachers from the nationalist period, they sent their disciples to the West. And some of them brought this asana, this teaching of postural yoga, but along with that comes the philosophy as well. But ultimately, Patanjali Yoga Sutra is inaction yoga. Now, where the Gita, I think, is distinctive amongst the many wonderful and rich and variegated texts of ancient India is Krishna says to Arjuna, that's not for you. That kind of inaction yoga is not for you. Higher is the action in the world yoga. And this is the karma yoga. So the Gita starts off in chapter 2, just establishing jnana, because both types of yoga, inaction, in the forest means that you block out the world, close down the mind, chittavritti nirodha, tadadrashtu sarupe vasthanam, you still your mind, tadadrashtu sarup, then you have an experience of the Atman. So that kind of yoga, blocking out the world yoga, is one option. So the Gita starts off with, first of all, there is jnana, there is an Atman, first teachings. The Gita really starts in 2:11. Ramanuja, the great commentator of the 12th century, says the Gita starts at 2:11. Chapter 1 is just Mahabharata. Chapter 1, even chapter 2, first 10, 11 verses, Mahabharata. Remember, the Gita has been taken out of the Mahabharata. It's an epic text. It's actually yoga for the warriors, action people. So because yoga before that was forest yoga. You look at it, even the Mahabharata, when the yogis come into Hastinapur, who are they? They're Vyas, they have the dreadlocks, they have the loin cloths, they're renunciates. So in the old text, even the Shvetashvatara, what is yoga? Renunciation. You go and sit in a cave, Shvetashvatara, 2nd chapter. So there's that yoga. So everybody thought that's what yoga meant. Even Arjuna gets confused. Twice in the Gita says, why are you telling me to act? Aren't I supposed to go to the forest? Beginning of chapter 3, beginning of chapter 5. Twice he says the same question. Why are you telling me to do this action? Doesn't yoga mean forest yoga? That is what it means. Even Krishna himself acknowledges, yes, that's what it means because the other yoga got lost. Chapter 4, got lost. Yoga nashta. So the Gita then Krishna is coming to articulate the other possible way of doing yoga. In fact, it gives a completely different definition of yoga. What is yoga? Samatvam, equanimity. Karma sukaushalam, yoga karma sukaushalam, skill in action. Skill in action. Patanjali yoga, the first kind of yoga, the one that didn't get lost, that's inaction. Pratyahara, the fifth limb of yoga, inaction. You close down the senses. You don't act. You stop consciousness, emanating out through the senses. That's meditational yoga, and that's a perfectly fine thing to do. You can do both. You can do inaction yoga in the morning when you do your meditation for an hour before you go out the front door. That's the way I think of it. Like Patanjali for an hour in the morning, and then Karma Yoga, Gita, Bhakti Yoga for the rest of the day. It's not this either or. But there's two ways of doing this yoga. One is the meditation where you actually have a practice, stepping out from the mind. The mind is the place of anxieties and fears and desires. These desires which are infinite. They're like a fire, Krishna says. Maharshano. They always eating. Kama esha, krodha esha, rajaguna samudbhavaha, vidhiyenam vaidinam. That's your enemy, Arjuna. Desire. One of the themes of this conference is, how is this relevant? Well, what the heck have we done to our planet? Destroyed it by what? Desire. Infinite desire. What is capitalism? Profit for the sake of profit. Max Weber, the great sociologist, German sociologist, definition of capitalism. What is it? the pursuit of profit simply for profit. No morality, no dharma, no yama niyama, just profit and more, and ever increasing. Why? Because it's a fire. This is what is destroying our planet. Unlimited, David, there was a program on the BBC the other day. David Attenborough, the great conservationist, he's saying it's consumption, consuming. The more you consume, what happens? The more dissatisfied you become. Why? Because desire is like a fire. What happens when you put more fuel on the fire? Why does Krishna give the example of a fire? The more fuel you put on the fire, the more it grows. It's not that it says, okay, thank you, now I'm satisfied and I will cease. Of course not. The metaphor of a fire is something you put fuel on it and it just demands more. It becomes greater and greater. So this is the world we've created, my friends. A world where desire rules. That's what consumer capitalism is. Let's put a name to it. Let's put a tag on it. And India is also running in that direction, my friends, even though it has these wonderful, powerful yogic traditions that really give us an alternative way of thinking about what is the goal of life. What is the purpose of life? The purpose of life is to realize the self and actually try to limit these desires, because the desires make us miserable. Suffering is nothing other than desire. Suffering is nothing other. Why? Because adyantavanta kunteya, these desires have a beginning and an end. So we have a desire, and for a moment we think we're happy, and then it finishes, and then what? Now we're thrust into a place of either you want to do it again, or you want to find something else, and the mind is constantly then seeking this illusory place of fulfillment, which desire by its very nature can never provide. This is the gift of India to the world. You find it in other traditions, but it's very rich in India, this idea that desire, the whole of the second chapter of the Gita, Arjuna says, who is the Stitadhi? Who is the one who has realized the self? And every single verse, you count, go home and count. There's 12, 15 verses. In every single one of them, Krishna says something about give up desire, give up attachment, give up clinging. So then what is the gift of the Gita then? Do we have to go to the forest? No. We can, and the word the Gita likes to use is buddhi yoga, which is you take the jnana. Always remember, I'm Atman, I'm not body-mind. The body-mind can never fulfill consciousness. Consciousness can only fulfill itself. Atmanam atmane atmana. In itself, through itself. This is Patanjali, even the other kind of yoga. Same goal. Krishna says both take you to the same goal. Inaction and action yoga. What is that goal? Svarupe vasthanam, Patanjali says. Atmanam atmane atmana, Gita says. An experience of our real, don't we want to know who we really are? Isn't that the sort of the first thing that this is what a human does. This is the distinction between a human and an animal. A human can ask these questions. Who am I? What happens after death? Animals don't ask those questions. This is what Manusha Jivan is all about. This is the purpose of human life. And we try to answer those questions through science, philosophy, and theology. And Gita gives us a way of thinking about these things, but also methods, right? Krishna says in the Gita, some see the Atman, some hear about it, some talk about it. You can't really understand it with the mind. But what's the goal? Darshana. Perception. So this is the richness of the Indian yoga tradition. It doesn't give beliefs. It gives methodologies and methods by which, if we practice those methods, we can actually have an experience of this state beyond the mind. And even if we don't go all the way there, maybe it take us many lives. Krishna says at the end of chapter 6, it takes many lives to perhaps attain the ultimate goal. But in the meantime, we learn to control our desires, and this is what our world needs. It needs to put a stop sign. Look at all the pollution, and India is heading down that road recklessly. The road of look at the pollution. Every year I go to Vrindavan. I first went in 1970. Beautiful green parrots, Yamuna, lovely Yamuna. We used to take bath every day in the Yamuna River. Parrots, peacocks everywhere. Green. Now go there. Rubbish everywhere on the Parikram path. You can't take bath anymore. You get sick. You have to take 3 drops and put on your head. So India is tearing down this road of consumerism and consumption, where it has these wonderful resources to actually really contribute to changing the world we live in. And it's really desire. The message of yoga, Buddhism, Jainism, all the same. That it is desire which is causing us to destroy ourselves. such that we're always in a state of anxiety and disappointment and frustration and always unfulfilled and always seeking both ourselves and our planet. So what is the principle of karma yoga? I'm sure your other speakers have discussed this, right? Karmani eva adhikaraste. Yes, you don't have to go to the forest. You can do your duty, but what's the principle? Ma paleshu kadachana. That one line is the quintessential definition of karma yoga. Do your duty, but don't be attached to the fruit. Duty for the sake of duty, right? Dharma. It's a big teaching of the Gita. Dharma. And do your duty, and then, what is yoga then if you're doing your duty in the world? Samatvam, equanimity, whatever comes, success, failure, right? These things will come just by karma. Because of karma, you'll be successful or not successful. So what is the karma yogin thinking? It's not thinking about the result. It's thinking, how am I doing my duty perfectly according to the definition of dharma for my particular dharma? If I'm an activist, am I being, free of ego, free of desire for money or fame or reputation? I'm just dharma for the sake of dharma. This is karma yoga. And this is one of the real contributions of the Bhagavad Gita to the world, and certainly to the yoga traditions, because as I say, before this, yoga meant forest yoga. You look in the ancient texts, the Puranas, the Itihasa, yogis were all in the forest. So why is Krishna speaking to Arjuna? He's not speaking to Vishwamitra or Vyas. He's speaking to the biggest Raja. He's a Raja. He's Rajasic. He's an energy person. He's an action person. Why has he chosen Gita, Arjuna? Of course, Krishna says, Bhaktosi, Saka, you're my bhakta. We'll get to that. But also he's a most prominent person at the time. He was the most prominent, famous person of the society at the time. So he's an action person. The dharma of the kshatriya is to make sure everybody else is following their dharma. So highly involved in society. The dharma of the kshatriya, especially of the kings, make sure everybody else is following their dharma. So he's chosen Arjuna to teach, to reestablish. Remember, it was lost. Yoga nashta, this skill in action. What is the skill? Act without desire. What's the skill? It's not some kind of physical skill. It's a mental skill. Am I doing this because of avidya? I want something for my body, mind. Or am I acting simply out of duty, such that I can slowly, by doing that, the mind becomes purified of ragas and dveshas and desires and pure, and such that it becomes so pure, eventually it allows an experience of the pure Purusha, the pure Atman that lies beneath. So there we have the karma yoga, and I would have to say, and different people read the Gita obviously through the different samskaras in their minds. Therefore, we have different Vedanta lineages. You should be aware of this. There's Advaita, but there's Vishishta Dvaita, there's Dvaita, Bheda, right? Shuddha Dvaita, Achintya. There are many different Vedanta traditions, and they understand the relationship between Atman and Brahman differently. And in many of those traditions, Brahman is Bhagavan. The Gita clearly says, Krishna says, Param Brahman, Param Dhamma, I'm the Supreme Brahman. So the ultimate teachings of the Gita are bhakti. Some will see jnana, because they are trained in that way through their lineages and through their practices. Some see the goal as jnana, but they're very, very strong, and others would argue the ultimate message of the Gita is there is a Bhagavan, a supreme being. And then really then, what do you do with karma yoga in bhakti? Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yat juhosi, dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tad kurusva madarpanam. Offer to me, Krishna says. Me, Bhagavan. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever sacrifices you do, whatever tapas you do it, but offer it to me. So karma yoga means just act dharma. You can be an atheist and do karma yoga. You don't have to even believe in Bhagavan. Because karma yoga is just dharma for the sake of dharma. You have to have jnana. Jnana, all yoga has to have jnana, even Patanjali. Why would you go to the forest to meditate unless you had jnana that there is an Atman? So all yoga, the basis, that's why it's the first teachings in chapter 2. Then Krishna is bringing this new possibility, action in the world. Karma yoga just means act without desire. Then when that very same action without desire, supported by jnana, when all of that is offered to Bhagavan, becomes bhakti. So this is, and the Gita offers a wonderful vision of a beautiful Bhagavan. Later in the later texts, like the Bhagavata Purana, which takes up where the Gita leaves off, we read the Bhagavata Purana, and we have the very, very rich teachings of Bhagavan and so forth. This becomes the Bhagavan of bhakti, of devotion, and a beautiful vision of God, especially in the Krishna tradition, where we have little mischievous Krishna stealing butter and being chased by his mother. Such a beautiful vision that captures the heart and delights the mind, and makes bhakti such a, Krishna says in the Gita, Susukam kartum avyayam, Susukam, he keeps saying, this bhakti is easy, it's easy. I will give you want liberation, I'll give you liberation. Of course, the real bhaktas, they don't want liberation. They want just eternal bhakti. But that's a topic for another day, my friends. So the Gita then completely relevant. What contribution does it offer us? It informs us clearly and philosophically and metaphysically that desire simply leads to frustration, anger, dissatisfaction. Then we compete for resources, and then countries fight each other, and we destroy our environment. If there's the one most pressing thing that we're facing, it's environmental calamity. And India right now is not helping out very carefully. It should be, it could be. I'd like to see India a leader in alternative energy. It has so much sun, it has so many brilliant, smart people. It has these philosophies. But right now, it's, go to Delhi. This is the second most polluted city in the world. This is all consumerism. This is all thinking, I must have a car, I must have 2 cars, I must have 3 cars. I must have a car for every member of my family. What is this? Kama Isha. This is desire. This is all of the ancient moksha teacher, the Buddha as well, right? Sarvam dukkam. Everything is frustrating. Why? Because of desire, second noble truth. There's a cause. So Jainism, Buddhism, which is an Indian tradition, Sankhya, Yoga, Vedanta, they all understand that desire is ultimately an unrestrained desire. In bhakti, we have a beautiful option. We can offer our desires to Bhagavan. We offer everything. Yad karoshi, yad ashnasi, whatever you eat. Before you eat, you offer to Bhagavan. You do puja. You offer your fruit to your Bhagavan. So this is one way you can channel desire. Jnana, you have to step back from desire. Jnana is to understand. This desire is in the body-mind, to understand it analytically. Right? The Vedanta tradition, especially Advaita Vedanta, is to understand the 4 principles of Shankara, the real and the unreal, the nitya anitya vastu. And so, but that's a knowledge thing. To understand these desires are based in the unreal, the temporary, and therefore they come and they go, they never satisfy. So this sort of the knowledge of desire, the Jnana traditions focuses on understanding desire from a knowledge point of view. Bhakti takes the view, yes, have to do all of that as well. But as long as it's dharmic, then you like beautiful things, you offer to Bhagavan. You like to eat nice food, you cook some nice food, you offer to Bhagavan. And in this way, the mind becomes, by that meditation on Bhagavan, the mind becomes pure. Pure. What does it mean, the mind become pure? Freed from desire means nothing else. And ignorance, avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, the kleshas. Ignorance, what is ignorance? I think I'm body-mind. What is vidya? What is viveka? I'm not body-mind, I'm purusha, I'm atman. I'm the drashtra, Patanjali would say. I'm the seer. I'm consciousness behind the body-mind. This is deep-level spiritual knowledge. You find it in other traditions, but Hinduism actually has a gift to offer the world. And if nothing else, it can remind Christians and others to look in their own traditions and find these same teachings. Right? Didn't Christ say, give up all you have? The message of Christ was one of renunciation, of controlling and saying the same thing. So we need to reconnect to our spiritual traditions, all of us, in order to solve our calamity. Science is not going to do it. You think science is going to come up with some magic wand and just all of a sudden that all these environmental catastrophes are going to disappear? Of course they're not. Maybe we'll find some amoeba that will eat plastic, but the damage is so enormous. And if we don't change our way of thinking, even if we find some solution, we'll just create an even bigger mess. We have to stop desire, my friends. Not just for our environment, but because it makes us miserable. It's not even if we're selfish. Let's say we don't care about anything else. I don't care. I got my house, I got my I don't care about the world, don't care about anything, only care about myself. Still, desire makes us miserable. So even from a purely selfish point of view, we have to control. Desires make us they never satisfy. So we're always seeking something else. We're always disappointed. We're always frustrated. And then what happens when we become frustrated? Gita says, then you end up in anger. Then comes anger. From desire comes anger, second chapter, right? Contemplate the objects of the senses. You look, all these things to buy, right? Then you become then you become attached. Then desire. And what happens from desire, Gita? Clear as anything. Anger. What is anger? Frustration, disappointment, anger. And then we become unpleasant. We become frustrated people. We take it out on our family. Anger is, wherever there is anger, you go beneath it, scratch the surface, and you'll see there's a frustrated desire lurking underneath the anger. Now, whether that's personal or social or nation state to another nation state, it's nothing other than desire. This, in my opinion, my friends, is India's very powerful, very obvious message. Every verse of the Gita. I have students, I had them count how many times in the Gita does this give up desire, give up desire. I think they came up with, I forget the number. There's about 750 verses, and it was something like a fifth of the verses had some message about giving up desire. But let's be clear about what kind of desire. Desire that to think we can find happiness through the body-mind. We're not the body-mind. Therefore it's metaphysically misplaced. It's metaphysically. We are actually Atman, not body-mind. It's metaphysics. So to think we can find happiness and fulfillment through the body-mind is illusory. What we can do, however, is lead a dharmic life, a sattvic life, control our desires, obviously maintain the body in a nice, healthy way. If we're bhaktas, which really is the ultimate message of the Gita, sarva dharman parityagya mamekam sharanam braja, last message of the Gita, the end of chapter 18, all of that, all about, surrender to Ishvara, surrender to Bhagavad. So that's the ultimate message. But even if we don't have theistic inclinations, what does that mean? We don't have samskaras in our mind that resonate with bhakti, but still from a jnana point of view, then we are Atman, we're not body-mind, and we can either take that into the forest or the ashram and just sit and meditate, or we take it out into the world of action, we do our dharma. And what do we do about the problems in the world? How about we be good examples? Instead of whining and moaning about our political leaders, this, that, and the other, how about we be dharmic and yogic and behave and cultivate yogic lifestyles, sattvic lifestyles, and then we affect whoever comes in our little world, in our little frame of reference, right? We're not the president of the United States, but what are we? We have our kshetra. We have our little field of influences. How about we exhibit the qualities instead of talking? How about we exhibit the qualities of yoga and the performance of desireless nishkama bhakti, nishkama karma, desireless action? That's how we affect the world. And then if it is our dharma to be activists and fight adharma, we think our politicians are adharmic. Clearly they become adharmic, both India and America. No more satyam, no more truth. Everything is lie, right? That's how you get votes. You can't be truthful. You have to please everybody. So you have to say things people want to hear. So even if we feel it is our calling, our dharma, right? Guna karma. What is dharma? It's your guna and your karma. It's your gunas. We're born with gunas. We're born with rajas and whatever, a combination of the gunas. If we have a very rajasic nature, as long as it's controlled by sattva, nothing wrong with rajas. Nothing wrong with rajas if it's controlled by sattva. It's only when it's tamas, it's controlled by tamas, then it becomes destructive. So if our dharma is to be politically active, let's be dharmic at least. Let's show examples of honesty and integrity, which have lost. It's lost in India as well. My friends, I've been going to India for 40 years. I've seen it in my own life, Kali Yuga. In my own life, I see Kali Yuga increasing. The last leg of dharma is satyam, the four legs of dharma. In the Kali Yuga, only one is, Parikshit, when he sees the bull in the Bhagavad Purana, only the one leg is tottering, but still a little bit there, satyam. In our own life, we see it, finish, fake news. Now to be a politician, you have to lie in order to get elected. We see this in our own life, the generation of Kali Yuga. You want to talk about Kali Yuga? Right there in your face. And India is no better. You want to get something done, you have to bribe. Even an electrician, you have to bribe. You want to get a document from a minister, bribe, under the table, 200 rupees. Well, old days, now they want 20,000 rupees. So what can we do? Be dharmic, my friends. The society is made of individuals. And let us be, if we can't change the world, if we have power and wealth, well, let us use that dharmically. If we don't, let us use whatever our kshetra is, because Krishna will look at what we give, not what that we give our skill set, whatever that is. Krishna, if we give everything we have, our resources, then that's bhakti, that's yoga, and that's the perfection of human life. I think I have, how much time do I have? I see 000 here. Is it question time, or do you want me to keep talking for 10 more minutes? Sorry?
It is questions time.
Okay, questions. Priya ji. Yes. Namaskar ji.
I wonder how many others in the audience felt like they were in a classroom. I truly felt like I was in your classroom, and I've taken my homework assignment down. I have to plan on how to give up body, mind, desire, and I have to translate all this jnana that's come into me and translate it into action. Here's questions from the audience. Of the questions from the audience, the first one is, you spoke about the Gita's relevance in these times of crisis. We are in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic. What are a couple of tips from the Gita to help us handle the negative impact of this pandemic?
Well, it's specifically the pandemic again. It seems very likely that this pandemic emerges from the way that animals are, factory farming, and the way animals are kept in absolutely awful conditions, and unnatural conditions, and simply to eat the bodies of the animals. And it seems quite likely that this and other animals comes from the way the animal husbandry, these awful conditions. And I think India's great message is vegetarianism and ahimsa. It is the first of the yamas in Patanjali. And this is one thing everybody, the Jains, the Buddhists, even right-handed Tantra, everybody accepts the 5 yamas. And what is the first of the yama? The very first thing you do, if you're interested in beginning a spiritual journey, what is the first thing you do? Ahimsa. You see that there is the same consciousness is in all beings. Especially, and therefore we don't kill them to eat them. So, and what to speak of, even if you're going to do that, a very tamasic thing to do, but to keep the animals, you should go onto the PETA, P-E-T-A websites and see how these animals are kept. These chickens are kept crammed into a cage. They can't even move. They poop on each other. All they can do is claw each other. And cows that are kept, they can't even turn around. They're kept like in a cage. They just feed them one end, and then they poop the other end, and then they milk them. This is asuric. This is asuric. Let's use a nice Sanskrit term. There's no other way of describing that. So India's message of ahimsa, don't lose this culture of vegetarianism. When I went to India in the 70s, 60% of India was vegetarian. Now it's 40% in my lifetime. It's gone down. So what about another 40 years? So there's a big animal rights movement in the West. Mostly it's based on, the body and health and the environment. India's animal rights is not based on, those are selfish things. My health and my, red meat is bad for me, and cutting the rainforest to feed the cows. So it's actually selfish. It's good. It's a good selfishness. It's aklishta. But India's ahimsa is based on compassion, the ability to see. What is this jnana? What is jnana? The ability to see. The cow is like me. I was a cow in a past life. The cow wants to live. It suffers like I suffer. So the Indians should be, promoting this ahimsa and stressing it. Don't let Kali Yuga take away all of there's things you have to fight for. And one of them is a message of compassion, fight for, I mean, not in a physical sense, but in an intellectual sense, in a discourse sort of way. that animals are embodied beings just like we are. They don't want to die, apart from the fact that meat is unhealthy. So anyway, connecting this with the pandemic, it seems quite likely that these pandemics are emerging from the way that animals are treated in the various markets around the world and the way that animals are treated. And perhaps this is a karmic reaction, a karmic global reaction to the way we treat other embodied beings. So I'd like to see a lot of attention being not in a violent way, not in this way that sometimes these vigilante sort of way that sometimes you see in India where people get, not like that, but in a way of through sattvic exposition, through philosophical, theological, through compassion, encouraging people to be compassionate. This is the great gift of ahimsa, which is very strong in India, much not more than anywhere else in the world. No other culture has had this culture of ahimsa towards other beings. I'm talking about towards other beings. So that I take that opportunity of your question, Priya, to argue very forcefully. Why? Because animals can't argue on their own behalf. What we do to our planet, that's humans. Okay, we act irresponsibly. We get the karma, wildfires in California, tornadoes. Oh, fine, pollution. You have to wear a mask in Delhi. Fine, but the poor animals cannot cannot defend themselves. So therefore, we have a dharma. Those of us who have some sattvic way of thinking of perceiving the other living entities, we have a dharma to act on behalf of them. That's activism. Okay, but in a non-violent way, an ahimsa sort of way. So animal rights has become big in the West now. And there's tens of millions of people. My own father was British and he became a vegetarian. So this is happening in the West. Why is India losing it? India's going down with more and more meat eating, and the West, more and more people becoming vegetarian. What's going on with that? So this is what we need to think about. 20%, again, I repeat, when I went to India, 60% in 40 years, down 20% to 40%. What is that? And whereas in the West, when I went to India, nobody was vegetarian in the West. Now you have maybe 10 million people, I don't know, in the UK, in Europe, there's tens of millions. This is one of the messages of the Gita. Ahimsa is central to the divine qualities that Krishna talks about, the divine qualities. So those of us attending, if you're eating meat, you need to think about where does it come from. Don't run away from this truth, this satya. Go on the website PETA, look at the way they treat the animals and decide, take moral responsibility. Do you want to eat something because it tastes nice at the cost of the awful, awful, awful asuric way we treat these animals? You need to look at that and take moral responsibility. So that's more than you asked for, Priya, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to express that.
I just summarize it as I think it's the result of runaway desire. So I think if we can, based on all of the speakers today, it's like desire that has to be contained. So let's move on to the next question. We have.
Yeah, but if I could just say one thing, Priya. Yeah, it's desire, it's rajas. But when we fulfill that desire at the expense of the suffering of others, that rajas becomes tamasic. So killing other beings to satisfy a desire, at that point, rajas has morphed into tamas.
Okay.
So
we have, Professor Bryant, we have 2 minutes left. And so maybe let's do one question. It says, let's focus personally on personal crises. Let's say financial crisis from the loss of a job or grief due to death of a loved one. How do we cope? Does the Gita give you any tools to cope with personal loss?
Simply to detach. These are the fruits of action. This is sukha dukkha. Adyantavanta kunteya. They come and they go, they come and they go. Just to recognize, as long as we've done our dharma, samaha, then whether we're personal loss or personal gain, so we go through a period of personal gain, when we sukha, a period of personal loss, and dukkha. This is just the ups and downs of the mind based on the ups and downs of our fruit. This is karmic. So our karma comes to us in patches, in periods. We have a phase of success, a phase of disappointment. Someone who's identified with the body-mind then becomes affected by this and becomes sukha when there are fruits and dukkha when there is, reversals and loss and failure. Yoga teaches us to go to a place beyond that. These things, they'll come and they go, and they come and they go. So we retire to a place, and this is what meditation helps us do. This is what a deep relationship with the sacred texts allow us to do. So when these things happen, we take refuge in the Gita, we take refuge in the Shastra. We realize is that these are all, none of this is eternal. It comes and it goes. We are eternal. So we still do our duty. We do our dharma. We don't give up. Okay, right now I'm going through financial loss. That's my karma. Let me do my dharma. How do I respond to that? But always from a place of, I am Atman. If you're a bhakta, dasosmi. I am a bhakta. I am a devotee of Bhagavan. Always from that, taking shelter in that place of jnana and bhakti. We go about our duty. We face our loss. We do whatever we need to do without attachment to the fruit. As long as we're doing our duty, then we are samaha. This is a big word in the Gita. It's everywhere. Samatvam yoga. The definition of yoga is samatvam, the state of samaha. Samaha means the same. Whatever happens, success, failure, samaha, it's the same. It's just external, superficial, mental, external. I'm an Atman. I will survive. I'm eternal. I keep doing my duty. Eventually my bad karma will change. This is the teaching of the Gita. And I see my time is running out.
Thank you very, very, very much.
Okay.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Ladies and
Have a
gentlemen,
successful conference.
Join our live event on the 10th, 11th and 12th of October 2020. Register at www.globalgita.org.